Happening now, we'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 198 for November the 18th, 2020. My name is Wesley Fryer, coming to you from windy Oklahoma City, where actually at school we lost power for a while because of winds, and there's still some strong winds going on, which sometimes means fires. And anyway, it's we're not living on the coast of Nicaragua getting hit by 2 Category 4 hurricanes within 2 weeks, so we got that going for us. But we're not here to talk about hurricanes, I don't think. We're going to talk about the technology news, and I'm joined as always by the guru of the North, the Great White North in Montana.
The guru of the North.
Jason Neiffer, how are you tonight, Dr. Neiffer?
Good evening, Dr. Fryer. I am well, thank you. I am again joining you from Missoula, Montana, where we're getting a brief reprieve from winter. It's raining tonight, which means that it'll probably freeze a little bit overnight, but we've had highs in the 40s. Although my in-laws, who have a cabin on the Missouri River just outside of Great Falls, Montana, north central Montana, they reported that at the kind of top gate of their property was 62 degrees today. So that's quite warm for November. Montana, as usual, has always a super interesting weather.
Because you guys had snow already.
We did. We've also had a below zero temperature already, too. And it's a little early for that, especially in Missoula. Missoula has kind of later serious winter. Our winter is shorter than it is east of the Continental Divide. So, if we have a serious snowstorm and below zero weather in Missoula earlier than, maybe middle December, that's early season for us. And in October, we had our first very, very, very cold weekend.
Sounds good. Well, we're, continuing to have our mild year with the exception of the ice storm that was the worst ever in terms of number of days with folks without power. So fortunately we maintain power. So we are going to talk about technology news, and there's a variety of headlines. We're really not in a slow week. I know we've had some of those before. So Dr. Neiffer, you want to kind of tell us how this is going to work tonight?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, we have a lot of links to talk about tonight. We very rarely get to them all. And so if you're interested to see what we're reading and where we're sourcing a lot of our discussion information, you can go to our website, edtechsr.com/links, and go to the Google Doc, which is hundreds of pages now, I think. We're almost at our 200th episode. We are 2 episodes away from that monumental occasion. So it will definitely happen in December. But you can go all the way back to the beginning of our show back, I believe in 2016 is when we started, beginning of 2016, and see what we've been talking about over time, or just see all the links that we're talking about. But tonight we've got some privacy surveillance news. I will guess that we'll have some extensive discussions about both recent releases from Apple, and also there's some Google news that's hanging out from last week, plus breaking news from this week, copyright, web development, some maker stuff, security, some home IT advice from Dr. Fryer and Dr. Neiffer tonight to talk a little bit about if you're spending more time at home, maybe building up your home IT skills or sharing this with family members. Our favorite category every week, potent potables or miscellaneous, depending on how you want to put that. And of course, we'll end our episode with the Geek of the Week, recommendations of things that we're paying attention to in the technology world. So, Wes, where shall we start tonight?
Well, let's start with some positive. And I put this under that lovely miscellaneous category. This is from Ars Technica today on November 18th. FCC takes spectrum from auto industry in plan to supersize Wi-Fi. And there's actually a couple elements to this. And, as you might expect, there's a political layer to this. Surprise, surprise. But basically, there's a part of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is managed, I think, in every country by the government in power. And it has been designated to be used for emergency communications between cars. The director of the FCC, Ajit Pai, do I say his name right?
Ajit Pai, I think.
Ajit Pai, thank you. Said that like 99.9% of all cars don't have this equipment installed, and basically it just hasn't been utilized. 99.9943% was actually what he said of the 274 million registered vehicles on the road. So the criticism was this thing is being, shot through at the end of the Trump administration, and perhaps should wait until a new administration with new leadership, comes to power. But half of this spectrum is being given to openly licensed openly licensed Wi-Fi, and it's adjacent to existing home Wi-Fi spectrum. And so they're saying schools specifically, as well as medical folks, are going to appreciate this. It's going to lead to faster Wi-Fi standards, because we're going to be able to have, a greater amount of the spectrum, utilized for those transmissions. And then the other half is going to be used for a new kind of automotive emergency and communication technology, which it has a clever acronym here: Cellular Vehicle to Everything, CV2X. But anyway, critics say there's really not enough spectrum there to use for that, and it was political. But I think it's interesting, and I think that the idea of faster Wi-Fi in school probably sounds like a good thing. Of course, we're going to need larger pipes of data coming into schools, and that's the promise of 5G, is that everyone's going to be able to walk into school with their 5G capable device, and potentially have more bandwidth than the entire school or school district has currently. Maybe not if you're a enormous school district, but it's that's interesting. So I thought that was positive. Probably not going to change our lives tomorrow, but it's a bit of good news, which is good to have today.
Well, and a theme that I'm going to be talking about in both of our Google and Apple news tonight is that, it doesn't really feel like it, but technology is evolving very quickly. It always has been. But in the last 20 or 25 years, if you go back to where we were in 2010 or 2000 or 1990, that technology has evolved dramatically. And I think you're going to start to see some noticeable changes in networking. You mentioned 5G. That's definitely a part of this. But what this article tells me is that we're going to start to see some interesting implementations of new ways of doing Wi-Fi. And I have to say, we'll talk about this a little later in the episode, but Wi-Fi can be pretty wonky. And for anyone that's been a tech director in a district like Dr. Fryer, or has served, I've done this. I've done IT work as part of my teaching gig before, where I had a period off to help teachers with things. Wi-Fi is pretty wonky, and implementing it in a stable way is still pretty difficult. And the more technology evolutions we can have behind that, I think the better off it's going to be in schools.
Where would you like to go, sir?
Well, I want to start with Google in case it becomes a rabbit hole, because I think Apple will become a rabbit hole tonight. But lots of interesting things going on in the Google world. And I want to start with some carryover news from last week that I actually think is related to the Apple news. But Chrome Unbox report November 11th that MediaTek, which is not known for its innovative processors, has unveiled a 6 nanometer CPU designed just for Chromebooks. And there's a lot of additional attention to that. Kevin Toffel at About Chromebooks also reports that this new MediaTek technology is really extraordinary. It can provide really, really interesting bits. But I think something's happening right now that's going to change some things that I've been concerned about in Chromebook land. I've never used an ARM processor Chromebook that has been satisfyingly fast to me. And in fact, the two that I've never owned one. We've had one at work before that we utilize in part to see more of the student experience with super cheap Chromebooks. And then I had a trial one for 48 hours once to take a look at, and it was always very frustratingly slow. Now that said, the slow experience is a lot with the low end Chromebooks, right? It's not unusual to get a low end Chromebook that may seem like it's a great deal until you try to do something productive with the Chromebook.
Or maybe remote learning with video conferencing and other kinds of applications. Lots of
exactly, right. And in fact, my sister, and I won't mention where she teaches, on the very odd chance that that their IT people is listening, but she's been issued a pretty mediocre Chromebook to do. She's remote teaching right now. She's a 5th grade teacher, and I will tell you that it was a big frustration to her because it was a dated Chromebook. It was 4 or 5 years old. It was still getting updates, so it's not like it was an outdated and an obsolete Chromebook. It's just an older Chromebook, but it started off not as a very speedy Chromebook in the first place. And so I ended up sending her as part of the vast, Neiffer laptop archive.
Just one of the screens in your home, not
Right. And what I ended up doing was I took it was a 4 or 5 year old Lenovo Windows laptop that was kind of my test bench for Windows. It's pretty stacked out. It had a really great i7 chip in it and 16 gigs of RAM. I put Cloud Ready on it to give her the Chromebook experience because she likes Chrome OS, and it immediately made a huge difference for her. We paired that with a nice HP monitor, new monitor, to create a better situation for her, and almost immediately a lot of her problems went away. But this notion that ARM-based chips are starting to really excite, I would think, technology enthusiasts, not just, because they're cheaper price, but because they're starting to turn into really competitive chipsets. We'll talk about that in greater detail in a moment with Apple, but this has got me thinking a little bit about the notion of, I've spoken of in past episodes that, Google's now supporting Chromebooks at 6, 7, 8, 9 years in some cases. That's okay if you have one of the premium Chromebooks. A couple of the Chromebook models that I own have an i5, one has an i3 chip in it. They have 8 or 16 gigabytes of RAM. But as an example of, where I'm concerned, this is a Lenovo N22 Chromebook. It's something I picked up for a song on eBay, and it's aimed at the education market. And one of the ways you know that is because it's got the handle on it, and so this is an educationally minded Chromebook. And this is actually a managed Chromebook. We've plugged it into our domain at Montana Digital Academy, the state virtual school, where I serve as the assistant director. And this is one of our student example Chromebooks, right? Like we test out digital assets on here that are a little more processor intensive. So multiple videos on a page, larger images on a page, an HTML5 based interactive to see what it looks like on here. And I have to say that it's an okay experience. This is a 4-year-old Chromebook. It has 2 years left in its life before it's no longer supported by Google anymore. But it's not very satisfying if you're trying to be a power user. And I know that term can obscure things, because the fact of the matter is that a lot of people perceive that our students aren't power users. But the bottom line is, if we want them creating, if we want them interacting, if we want them on Zoom or Meets or WebExes or whatever video conferencing technology that you're utilizing, I think it's pretty darn important to have a pretty a decent Chromebook. So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I think that we may be on the verge of some very interesting Chromebooks that have that ARM-based chip, the MediaTek ARM-based chip in it. And that's what Chrome Unbox is suggesting. That's what Mr. Toffel over at About Chromebooks is suggesting. And I have to say, I'm looking forward to, it sounds like middle of 2021. Middle of 2021, we're going to see some of these new ARM-based Chromebooks released. HP, I know, has a couple that are definitely in the pipeline. So we may see faster low-end Chromebooks, which might make that particular platform, I think, that much more interesting and a longer term play, because if it does last 7 years and it's got a chipset that stays fairly speedy for whatever the modern web looks like in 2027, that's really interesting. So, Wes, you've been an IT director before. You are an Apple user by personal choice, but I know there's Chromebooks in the house over at the Fryer household. Any thoughts about this evolution?
Got my 11-inch Dell Chromebook in my classroom, pulling it out when kids, don't have a device or need a charge, don't have a charge or whatever. And yeah, we're using everything every day, basically. So we got our 6th graders. I teach 5th and 6th grade, so 6th grade's on iPads, brand new Gen 7s, and actually 5th graders are on older ones. One thought is, how long is it going to take these things to ship? When we were looking at ordering stuff in the summertime, iPads were supposed to ship a little bit sooner than the Chromebooks with the third-party resellers that we were talking with. But if you hadn't ordered by early in the summer, they were talking about November, like this time frame for getting your Chromebooks. So I think the prospect of faster processors, and as you allude, that means potentially greater return on investment for schools to be able to hang on to them longer, get more money out of them, more value. All that sounds good. But how quickly are these things going to be available at scale for schools? I know that we are going to be buying some devices, and there's a good possibility that some of those are going to be Chromebooks. We've got a fleet of Chromebooks that are aging, and while it is good that the licensing is extended on some of those, they're the oldest ones are absolutely not up to the task of remote learning when it comes to
Yes.
video conferencing with Google Meet, which is what we're using for our middle and high school, and then trying to do some other things and just having a bunch of tabs open. I mean, it is painful, and the trackpads are kind of painful too. In fact, I'm thinking here. We're not remote right now. I don't know how many schools in Oklahoma aren't. We've got surging COVID numbers, and we've got stuff's happening. We're just trying to make it to Friday. Next week we got the whole week off for Thanksgiving break. But there's a good likelihood that all of us, no matter where we live, are going to be doing some remote learning this winter as flu season kicks into high gear, and as we're dealing with this surging virus. So I think that all of these things are relevant. And the other thought I had was, what do we need to prepare? You were talking about your sister. If you're going remote as a student, as a teacher, what is your optimal situation? And I've mentioned to my kids, and I probably need to tell them again, if you've got another device besides this older Chromebook that you have currently, because we've actually been, comparing Chromebooks and iPads and trying to make a decision on what we're going to do for the entire middle school for 4 grade levels. That decision hasn't been made yet. We're still weighing options. But basically, you want to have some juice. You want to have some power because video conferencing, it takes some CPU processing power and some RAM. And, certainly if you're on an ancient Chromebook with like 2 gigs of RAM, I mean, you're really hurting. Hopefully, you've got at least 4 gigs. But it is important for us to think about like you said, what is it that we want students to be doing? And hopefully it's more than just, email and word processing. It has to be. We live in the media era. The video is the pencil of the 21st century. If our kids are not working with video, and I'm not just talking about watching them, if they're not creating them, if they're not using media, they are not developing the kinds of literacy skills they need to be good citizens and also to be good entrepreneurs, employees, whatever kinds of roles that we're going to play in the economy in the years to come.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, a couple of other kind of quick Google notes. One other article from last week that I want to mention, in part because I have a personal experience here. YouTube Premium, which is paying $10 a month for a set of benefits. Google is starting to let you know a little more directly how much you're benefiting from that, and they're also starting to advertise it again. And Chrome Unboxed reported on November 11th that first of all, it keeps telling you how great of a deal it is, and the other thing that they want you to know is that the app has been updated to try to let you know how many ad-free videos. And well, let me tell you a little bit about Google Premium to start off with. It is $10 a month. I've been doing it. I'm saying for at least 5 or 6 years, at least since it's pretty close to when it started. And I think you buy it now for $11.99 a month is the current price. But the idea is that first, when you're logged into your account, all your YouTube videos are completely ad free, right? So no pre-roll, no banner at the bottom of the YouTube video. That's all gone. On the YouTube app, you get what's called background play, which means that if you want to listen to a YouTube video in the background, play music or listen to it while you're working on your phone, then it enables that on the app. You also get access to YouTube Music, which is kind of sort of a Spotify alternative. It's a little more nuanced than that because it has YouTube backing it. And then you can also, one of my favorite features is on your cell phone, you can download offline videos, which means that one of the things I used to do on airplane flights, remember we used to be able to fly on airplanes, is I would sit in the airport and get on the Wi-Fi and pick, 10, 20, 30 YouTube videos that interested me, and it would download them to my phone so I could watch them on the airplane. It's a great way to pass the time on an airline flight. And there are other kind of sort of benefits are there too. YouTube Kids is ad free. You also get they used to have YouTube series that was for YouTube Premium only, but they're migrating those to free, but you at least get them ad free when you do it. but they're starting to add to the app to remind you how many hours of ad-free video that you've watched. And I went into my app and it told me that since July 8th, which is when they started kind of categorizing this and keeping track, I've seen 140 hours of ad-free video. And I oftentimes talk to friends that I tell them about, I love all the kind of shows that are on YouTube, people that are creators sharing information. I watch a tool collectors channel. I watch Mike, my coworker at the Montana Digital Academy's mom has a YouTube channel. I watch occasionally her shows, and I have all sorts of hobbyist shows that I watch pretty regularly on YouTube. A lot of cooking channels. And, I've told other people about them, and they will sometimes ask me about things like, well, what about, all the advertising? Like, they feel like they're getting assaulted almost by the ads. And the bottom line is I don't really remember that. So just something to keep in mind. And I thought that was a kind of an interesting article. Any thoughts about YouTube Premium? Are you a subscriber, Wes?
I haven't even given it a try. I do feel assaulted by ads, and I purchased and set up a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if it is a 4. It was just about a month or two ago, less than 2 months ago that I set it up. In that set, I don't even know which model I have, but it there's what's called Pi hole, and it's a way that you're supposed to be able to block ads. And what I wanted to do was block the ads on Apple TV. On my computer, I run the uBlock Origin extension, which is fantastic. I could drop the link in here in a minute, and that takes care of me. But when it comes to devices that we're hooking up to our televisions, which do not allow for extensions, and when it comes to smartphones, at least the iPhone, there's some limited ad blocking, but not on YouTube. And I mean, obviously Google has got to make money, right? So I don't know. I might consider giving that a try. But honestly, your Geek of the Week from a few weeks ago about auditing our credit and debit cards and making sure that we don't have any monthly recurring charges on there that we have forgotten about and we authorized a long time ago. We kind of need to do. So I need to do more on the cutting back side. But I do find myself watching quite a bit of YouTube, and it's a fantastic platform. It's very interesting to see the directions that Google is going right now with both consumer and then the impact it's having on some educational things. They're making changes. Stuff is not static. It's very dynamic.
And then a couple other quick ones, and then I would imagine we've got some stuff to say about Apple tonight too. Google has announced that the Expedition app is going away, which is their virtual reality play. The good news is a lot of that content is going to go into the Google Arts and Culture app, as opposed to just disappearing, but it's unlikely to have its virtual reality ability. And I have to say, I know a lot of teachers that are super into the Expeditions app. I know, Wes, you also noted that Tour Creator is also being killed off as well. I know a ton of classrooms that have utilized these really, really great platforms for creating cool stuff inside of their classrooms. It's sad that it's going away, but the fact that I've heard really only classrooms utilizing them, I don't know a lot of kind of end user consumers that have really got into this. Kind of tells you maybe why Google is going in that direction.
I wonder if it's part of a lessening of their educational commitment, sadly, because the article that you posted mentions that, in the global pandemic, they are realizing that they've got to invest in, video conferencing and other kinds of technologies like virtual reality and augmented reality are not yet mainstream. And it's really kind of an outlier, innovator, early adopter sort of thing to be doing that. So, I mean, I get that part and in terms of their resources, but it does sort of feel like maybe Google, well, I mean, the big thing was, who's the Google chief evangelist that was the other keynote at Montana Mountain Moot? See, we're showing our age, Jason. We can't get the answers just like this. Peggy will help us maybe. He lost his position. They let him go, and that paired with everything for G Suite is not charging. You got his name?
Jamie. That's all I got.
Cassup.
Thank you.
Yes. So, I mean, that, which is shocking. I mean, he is just the best. I think I couldn't imagine a better spokesperson for Google Education than Jamie Cassup. So I don't know. It doesn't feel great. And well, the weird thing is, I just have been doing with my 5th and 6th graders this fall. Actually, my Spanish students, we did virtual tours of Mexico, and then with my 6th graders on their iPads, we did a fun little spreadsheet activity of a trip, and kids calculated budgets, and then they made a little tour on Tour Creator. I guess Google Maps and Google Earth are, I mean, they're still there and they're not going away, but Google Tour Builder was being sunsetted already, and so I thought that Google Tour Creator was the new tour platform, and it plugs right into Expeditions, and then it goes away. So I think that's sad.
Yep.
Here's a positive, though. Google, maybe this doesn't qualify as an event, but this is Ars Technica from November 18th. Google Pay relaunch transforms it into a full financial service. And this article has a link to a 30-minute video, which very much had the feel for me of an event, like an Apple event. But it is, and it's well done. So again, just like Apple, if you, in terms of videography, in terms of visual storytelling, watch part or all of Apple's recent events and the ways that they've had different people come up and they intersperse these, very amazing, videos, and it's just professional videography done probably as well as it could be for a product launch and for product marketing. Similarly, Google knows what they're doing too. And so this presentation, just a content aside, is really well done. But this reminds me, they're becoming a little bit more like Vimeo, Vimeo and PayPal, and really trying to get into the direct, person-to-person payments. Got a really cool feature if you're out with friends and you need to split the bill, and you can just say, here's the bill, and then everybody can pay their portion directly from the app, and it, splits it equally right away. I don't know if it means you still would get charged or if it would hold off till everyone chips in and it pays. But the other thing that's really neat, so the article I put in there talks about privacy issues. Like, oh no, Google's going to have access to now all of your financial, expenditures. Well, evidently they are designing for privacy, and you can choose whether or not you want to receive custom apps or not. That's not turned on by default. Interestingly, if you do opt in, it either says opt in or I'll try it for 3 months, then ask me again. So anyway, they're saying they're not selling that to third parties, and they're also not going to be cross-pollinating other Google services, with, oh, look, Wes just bought, a new smoker, and now we're going to, bombard him with ads about this on YouTube or so on other, Google properties that aren't tied to the payments app. But, like Apple with their Apple One card or whatever, and just with Apple Pay, there's such a huge financial market out there. And with Google and its capabilities to design just phenomenal user experience, I'm personally excited about that, but probably most interested in the insights portion, which reminds me of Mint, M-I-N-T. Mint is free. You get ads and offers, but you're able to connect your bank accounts, credit cards. You can set your budget. You can have goals. It's a great idea. And so many people have trouble managing money, finances. This is like, let's take it back to the classroom. We need to be helping prepare students for real life, not just taking Algebra 2, like they have for 100 years. And so, no offense directly and personally to the Algebra 2 teachers out there who may be listening. But we need to be doing financial literacy, and we need to help kids acquire these kind of practical skills. So I think it is very positive that Google's doing this. I'm excited. I actually signed up from a security standpoint. This is important. Like, who do you trust, right? We're talking about your finances, your bank accounts, but just like you can connect different kinds of bank accounts, but not everything to Mint, and banks have come along. So your local bank may not be connected yet. Big banks are being connected, and then they're having this new service you can sign up on a wait list for called Plex, which is going to be with Citi, and then there's some credit union from Stanford or something, but it's going to be a more fully featured banking solution. Okay, and my last thought about this is search. Oh my gosh. Google has started as a search company. Google Photos, look, folks, if you're not using Google Photos right now, what are you doing with your pictures? It is incredible. I mean, not only the facial recognition, but also being able to put in different words and search and put in different queries. You're going to be able to do that same kind of thing, like say food last month or food in August or whatever. And boom, there you're just going to see all of your expenses. And so in terms of taking stock and auditing, where your money is going, what you're doing, I think it's really great. And obviously, I am a Google fanboy, and I trust Google. I'm a little bit sad to see some of these changes that have happened recently, but I also recognize it's a dynamic environment. We want companies to make money. Now, I'm not saying Google's at risk for not making money. They're not. They're one of the biggest companies out there. But anyway, I'm overall still a fanboy. So, Jason, are you a Venmo or Zelly or PayPal or all of the above? What is your, and do we want to disclose that on the air, because we know it's being and someone's going to immediately try to hack us if we say what we use, I guess.
Right. I'm a longtime PayPal user, and it's just convenient for me more than anything else. I was hooked to my eBay account, and then I did try to, and I can't remember the name of, I think it might be Venmo. It is Venmo. That a friend of mine Venmo'd me $20 a couple weeks ago, and it's very convenient. I mean, I would say, but if that's all wrapped into the Googles, that would be better, absolutely better for me. I mean, what creeps me about Venmo is that, I mean, it is a social payment platform, right? And some people don't shut off the notifications of who's paying things for what, and like that part creeps me out a little bit. I don't need my finances to be social. I have enough in my life that's social. I don't need to add finances to it. But, I'm not surprised that in the same way that Apple has diversified a bit by going into those financial services pieces, I'm not surprised Google's going into that direction as well. I've never really been able to get, I have Google Pay going. I've never pulled off the contactless payment with either my phone or a watch yet. Assuming
that's because you don't have an Apple Watch yet.
Well, yeah, and assuming I go back, which that's actually a great segue to our next topic, but assuming I go back to Apple stuff, then there's a decent chance, because I know my friend Mike, who's an Apple guy too, loves to just wave that watch in front of a payment terminal and then look back at me with a look of deviousness. So I guess that brings us to the next piece. We talked about most of the actual news. Oh, I do want to mention, Wes also shared a great article. 95 Google noted Google's Black Friday deals, and they are selling some stuff at very, very significantly discounted prices. And so if you're looking for Google stuff, the hardware, the speakers, the Nest Minis, the
whole
phones,
Macs for 50% off, 150 instead of $300. And it used to be 400. It used to be $400.
And my understanding is that speaker is amazing. Like, it sounds super duper great. So, if you're interested in that, Black Friday stuff are coming. Okay. So, last week we noted that after an Apple keynote, the M1 Macs are here. There is a MacBook Air, there's a MacBook Pro 13, and there is a Mac Mini, all with the new M1s. And the hardest part about this was that for about 96 hours after that was over with, there was just a lot of hand-wringing speculation amongst the tech media about these new Macs. The greatest thing about Tuesday of this week, so yesterday, is that people have them in their hands now, and they're able to tell more about it. And I'm linking to a really great article from 9to5 Mac from yesterday that basically takes all of the major Mac reviewers and puts all their videos in one place, and it quotes a number of the premier reviews. And I have to say, the thing sounds awesome. That we've had benchmarks that said that this was a very impressive hardware platform, but now we have it in people's hands, and they're reporting that it's a very impressive platform. And there are tons of interesting things, I think, in the reviews themselves. I would strongly suggest watching 2 or 3 if you're interested in being an early purchaser of this. there are a lot of great reviews that show you what it looks like to load up any application. But in addition to that 9 to 5 Mac article, I would also point out that Mac Rumors reports on November 15th that the M1 chip emulating x86, so in other words, the M1 or the new laptops emulating the old style of operating system apps, Intel apps, is faster than every other Mac single core benchmark, which means that it is very impressive that it's going to be as fast or faster than every previous model, even though it's running on a new platform, and it gets extraordinary battery life, and it's very crisp and a relatively low heat. And then a couple other pieces here, and then we could talk about maybe some specifics. Microsoft has also released a universal Office app. It's in beta right now, so you have to be on a beta channel. It's not that hard to do that on Mac Office. So it would be native to the M1 chip, even though it will work just fine either way. And I know from some friends on Twitter that purchased M1s, Google has released a version of Chrome that is native to the M1 chip as well. So a new version of Chrome for Macs that is intended for the new laptops. So I have to say, I'm not in the market for one of these for a couple months yet. Maybe the January reviews look different, but I think I'm sold. So I'm gonna upgrade at work. My big decision is a Mac Air versus a MacBook Pro. There are two major differences between the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. The first one, the Pro has a fan. And the reason why that is a big difference is because with these M1 chips, they are built to be mobile first, right? Because that's their architecture, came from Apple's mobile development. And when they get warm, they tend to slow down. So having a physical fan in the laptop itself adds a little heft to the laptop, decreases the battery ever so minimally, but it also increases the speed that you can push things through. So that is interesting. I also learned that, and this seems kind of brilliant, the MacBook Air's, the graphics processor has only 7 cores in the MacBook Air as opposed to the MacBook Pro, which has 8 cores. And the reason why, it's the exact same chip, but in the manufacturing process, sometimes the chips don't work out and only 6 cores work, or only 5 cores work. And so they're able to utilize the 7-core processors in the MacBook Air because they only promise 7 cores. It's still pretty speedy, and it's still a great chip, but it also decreases the overall price of the experience for the end user because they don't have to have perfect 8-core chips for the MacBook Air. And so I thought that was super interesting and also kind of clever on Apple's part from an industrial design standpoint. So Wes, I mean, I know we talked about it last week, but anything changed for you now that the great reviews are out?
I mean, I'd love to get one. I'm just not up for the refresh and not gonna, fork out that money. Peggy and I are talking a little bit. She's deciding really between an Air or a Mini. I was recommending if she doesn't need to be portable, which she says she doesn't need to be, go with a Mini and go for a big screen. That you can pick up a large, very high resolution screen, and I think be really happy with that. So really, the only thing I think would be on my near horizon might be a second screen. I'm fortunate to have this 27-inch iMac, which is great. But, even like with Zoom or whatever, Zoom, Google Meets, whatever, it's really nice to have a second screen.
Agreed.
And I would probably do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's exciting, but it's just not that season of life for me to be looking at a new machine. Pretty cool that you're up for that, though, because it's well timed, sir.
Yeah, it is. And so then of course, and I won't go too much into this because this is just my ridiculous thinking, but it probably means I'm back in the Apple architecture, at least for a while. So I'm looking at maybe buying an older iPhone, maybe an 8, maybe an X, to kind of get me back there. I would like to buy an Apple Watch at some point, and then the tablet's less important to me because I don't spend as much time on a tablet, but the newer tablets look nice, so we'll take a look at
I would
how
go
that
with,
plays out.
if you're looking at an 8, I would even look at an SE because that's speedy. That's a really
Yes,
nice
good
processor.
point.
And
Yeah.
you're going to still have the home button. And it's in, the old form
Right.
factor.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm totally happy with my 8. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
See what Swappa is selling, the 8s for. But
Yep. That's a good point.
exciting. It's going to be exciting to hear your views. It's always interesting when somebody who has been deeply invested in another architecture and another, operating system and environment, is getting into something else. You've just got that, very nuanced perspective because you didn't just have a small dip into this other environment. You can really do a lot of comparison. Right. So it'll be interesting to see what you say.
Well, and I will tell you that the fact that Chrome is native to the M1 chip punched my ticket. I mean, I think that I spend all my time in Chrome world. I'm never going to be a Safari guy ever. Sorry, I just won't. I'm a Chrome guy, and I hear it's acceptably speedy. So we'll see how that plays out. So a couple other quick other Mac articles. Mac Rumors reported on November 14th that a very reliable, Mac rumor estimator person has said that Apple has something left in 2020 to release, and it's going to be their Christmas surprise. So we'll have to see what that looks like. And then Wes, I think you dropped the article in about the App Store. We've talked about the App Store revenue in the past. You want to jump on that one for a moment?
I will. That's pretty interesting. So if you make less than $1 million on the App Store, you can now apply. It's an opt-in to have Apple, instead of taking 30% of your revenue, take 15%. And so there's some conjecture there in the article about why they're doing that. There's some antitrust lawsuits going on right now with Apple, and fights over what is called the Apple tax. So not exactly sure why they're doing that, but I'm sure, the tech correction, as we've spoken of, in terms of the potential for impending regulation on our technology companies, not just for social media, but for other kinds of things like antitrust, might have something to do with that. So interesting. Probably not going to have an impact on us, but it could mean that more money for independent developers. And I think that's great. I don't think we benefit as a society and as consumers when we just have the big fish eat the smaller fish, and we end up with less competition and fewer players. I think it's fantastic for folks to be able to be independent coders, independent entrepreneurs, and be able to make it. And so, getting 15% of more of your revenue can be a really big deal if that's your bread and butter, is putting stuff out in the App Store. So I think this is going to be an exciting announcement for the developer community, and we'll see how many people it affects, because they are going to have an application. So maybe they're just going to kind of, ease into that. But it seems like that may be a response to some antitrust stuff, maybe especially happening in Europe.
Well, and one of the things that I miss about the Apple environment is there are a lot of very spirited independent developers on the Apple platforms. And if you're into clever, interesting apps that do interesting workflow things, that environment is way more prolific on the Apple world than it is on PC world. And I've been I've been off of Apple stuff since, I can't remember if it was 2013 or 2014, but my beloved MacBook Air 11 died in a epic battle with a cup of coffee, and I just didn't have the financial wherewithal at the time, although I've bought stuff since then that well exceeded what an Apple laptop would have been. But the bottom line is that it's not it's interesting to me. So we'll see where it goes, and I am very much looking forward to purchasing the hardware. Looks super great.
Absolutely. Let's pick up a Facebook article. I put this at the top. This is from Input. Had not heard of this source before. From November 13th. Facebook's tracking tools are even worse than we feared. And this is a reference to some recent congressional testimony given by Mark Zuckerberg. And so one of the things that Zuckerberg claimed, he didn't remember the name of it, but he revealed is that apparently Facebook has a tool which is able to connect our activity by the IMEI number which is kind of like the MAC address, I guess. Each device has an IMEI number. I think the MAC address are actually attached to your network card. So your Wi-Fi would, if you're on a computer, for instance, your Wi-Fi has a different MAC address than your Ethernet card, and those things can be spoofed. But your IMEI card is a unique identifier. And so I know a couple of weeks ago or whatever, we've talked about VPNs and use VPNs. And that's one of those things I was saying, I don't know if the VPN would actually, obscure that or obfuscate that. And what this points to, just like the documentary we've mentioned on the show several times, The Social Dilemma, that's on Netflix, is that there is a vast trove of data that continues to be collected about each one of us. We largely have no idea the scope and the breadth of that cloud of data that's being collected about us, that's being sold, that's being used with our quote unquote consent. But I'm trying to think of the podcast I was just listening to. Oh, actually, I think this was Edward Snowden. I'll mention this. It's from the TED Radio Hour, and I'll mention that in the Geek of the Week. But if it's really not a choice, you really can't give consent, or I don't know, something to that effect. And anyway, the way that Facebook operates and some other companies, there's some question on whether, what does consent mean, and how much choice do we really have, and what are the things these companies are doing with our data. Again, the tech correction. We need it, Jason. When will you run for Montana legislature? We need your voice to bring forward the tech correction. I mean, seriously, this kind of stuff is going to take years to do, and we are going to have very educated and intelligent members of Congress who are going to be able to work with these issues, and try to not only hold corporate interests and the desires for corporate profits up, but also things like privacy, rights that matter, a whole lot of other issues that go beyond financial, that are important and that matter. So, any thoughts about Facebook? And do you think how do you feel using your VPN? Does it give you, that somebody in the local coffee shop is not sniffing your packets?
Right. Well, I don't know. Facebook's hard because I really would like to get off of that platform. I think they are not doing a very good job at earning my trust, but I'm connected to so many people I want to stay connected to there.
Absolutely.
And especially right now. Right. I feel like that my connection with a lot of people, I could think of at least 24 people outside of the state of Montana that I would have physically seen if COVID hadn't happened. Right. And I'm not saying that I'm talking to them daily, but this it's a little rough. So I don't think there's going to be regulation. I've seen a number of articles that talk about that the prospect of Biden figuring this out is not any more successful than Trump having figured it out, which he hasn't done much in this arena. There's a lot of over dramatic congressional hearings about this. There was another one this week where the CEOs of Twitter and Facebook appeared. Not interesting because I know there's going to be no action.
There's more facts and more grandstanding by some politicians, but yeah, I agree. Not really some action. Let me pick up another quick one that's just sort of a single article in the topic. We got a copyright topic. This is Ars Technica from November 17th. Can you tell I read a bunch of Ars Technica articles today? GitHub agrees RIAA claim is bunk, restores popular YouTube download tool. This was in our show notes, but I don't think we actually talked about it a few weeks ago. But the Recording Industry Association of America was able to convince Microsoft, which owns GitHub, to take down an open source project which allows folks to download YouTube videos. One of the things with fair use law in the United States that's important, if it's going to be fair use, is that there are legitimate legal uses, like that every use is not illegal. And the RIAA was arguing that this was, completely illegal, subverted, the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Rights Copyright Act, right? Whatever, DMCA. I don't know, whatever that acronym is. Anyway, that it was bad. And so the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which we have mentioned and cited on the show before, filed a brief on behalf of GitHub and pointed out that, yes, there are very legitimate legal uses for this, and this was an overreach. And so Microsoft, in its response, said that they're going to not only engage lawyers, but also coders and the techies when they have this kind of a copyright claim. And so that's really positive. I actually needed to do this today for my students. I had a video about Cuba for my Spanish students I wanted to show. It had a small little part that wasn't horrifically inappropriate, but I just didn't want to have that in for my 5th graders. So I needed to download the video and just cut that little piece out and show it to them. I actually used another tool, Y2Mate, which I had used before for our show, and it worked great. But anyway, that's a capability that, yes, I'm sure there are folks that are using things illegally, but just because something is used illegally does not mean that, piece of software would necessarily be, something that needs to be banned. So yay, EFF, and, fight on. I'm glad to see that success.
Yep, absolutely. And then I want to share one other article, and I think let's push our Wi-Fi guidance to next episode, because I feel like that could be another somewhat interesting rabbit hole. But I wanted to point out, because I know people are looking for distractions at home, but ZNet reported on November 2nd that the Raspberry Pi 400 is out. And it is a really interesting package that's available now. It is obviously the Raspberry Pi, which is a single board keyboard that has all the computer integrated into a single board. It oftentimes has very low power use requirements and can perform as an actual computer. But this one is the Raspberry Pi 400 keyboard model, which is $70. And it kind of looks like the old Commodore 64. The whole computer is built into the actual keyboard itself. And I've seen some video reviews of this. I mean, this is not a high-end keyboard by any stretch of the imagination, but it comes with a kit that has 4 gigs of RAM. You bring your own micro SD card for storage. It has Ethernet ports on it, and a charger comes with it, and it uses one of these ARM chips that we keep talking about all the time. And then a 78 key keyboard. But if you're looking for a project, and there are literally thousands of really interesting projects on the internet. Type Raspberry Pi project into Google, and you can build all sorts of things, from robots to set-top TV boxes to desktop computers. The Raspberry Pi is big enough that you can actually have 2 4K displays hooked to it, which is just extraordinary. I have an older Windows box at home that can't do that, so it's pretty extraordinary stuff for $70.
And I learned a new term. I set up my Raspberry Pi as a headless computer, which means there is no graphical user interface. If you're just gonna, interact with it via the command line from terminal on the Mac or PuTTY from your Windows PC or whatever. It's those sorts of things push my geek quotient, because I don't live on the command line like some people I know do, but it's powerful. It's important to. Sometimes those kinds of skills are vital. So if anybody has a suggestion for Raspberry Pi project I should try, I would be open to that, because I have one that is really not working. The other thing I found when I installed Pi-hole, which is the ad blocker Raspberry Pi project, is it really slowed things down. Even though that is a zippy Raspberry Pi, you change your DNS, so all of your traffic for your network goes through it, and compared to Google or whatever, it's so fast. So incidentally, that's something that's come in handy at school. I think our DNS server locally is working better, but at sometimes I think it has actually been a point of bottleneck for our school network. So it's good to know how the internet works and what DNS is, and you don't have to use your local DNS if you have access to that setting on your computer. Sometimes it can make a big difference in speed depending upon where you are.
Absolutely.
We did pretty good on the articles. I went ahead and moved in the show notes, pushed to next week if we want to take those up next week. So
awesome. Well, Wes, share your geek of the week.
One. I'm just going to do one. So I have found a lovely tribe. In addition to being here in the Jason for EdTech SR tribe each week, I really immediately is important, and I'm going to be. I am grounding myself professionally and right now for the future. So there's a wonderful conference that before COVID was happening face to face, and I went there 2 years ago in Rhode Island. The Media Education Lab, that is Renee Hobbs' initiative. They have a great, which I attended virtually this summer, along with the Moodle Moot. Those were the two best conferences I went to. And anyway, they have a media club. The media club is open to everyone, so pay up. Anyone can join. The first Monday. Usually, our next meeting is actually going to be on time, and there's a great TED Radio Hour cast from March year, March I think 20th of 2020. The title of it is called IRL Online. If online, and so I recorded this week a little 8-minute video preview episode, which you can catch the TED Radio podcast. They did in September. They have about 6 different folks that have been that have given TED Talks, because that's what the TED Radio Hour is, right? They take folks who have spoken on the TED stage and they amplify them. And so anyway, these are some names you might know, some that you don't, but there are 5 of them. And it's just fantastic, and it really hits a broad range of topics, sort of tech correction. Where's regulation going specifically in the EU? Privacy. Ed Snowden is one of the people that's on here. Talking about Facebook and the issues that are raised in the social dilemma. Although this preceded that documentary, it is really fantastic. So shout out for that. Join us. You can find the link in the YouTube description to the Facebook page, and you can get in contact with Sam. It's a Zoom call. And so if you get on that list, you'll be able to receive that and join us. It happens at 12 p.m. Eastern, which is 12. Yeah, that's right. Noon, which is 11 a.m. Our time in Central Time, and wherever that is for your spot.
Awesome. And I saw that Manish Samarodi also answered you back on Twitter today, which I was fanboying a lot. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
she's so great. So I'm so excited that you got her attention too. So, and then I shared an article today that probably mimics what both Wes and I would tell most users, is that you're stuck at home and you're working at home, whether you're teaching at home or you are doing a job at home that you would otherwise be doing in an office, and you're stuck there with your laptop, or you do have a desktop machine, you have a single monitor. For the love of all that's good, please buy a second monitor and plug it into your desktop, because desktop or laptop, because the bottom line is that it's not just us saying that this is better. There is research behind the notion of being more productive. And I share an article this week from NetStar that refers to some of the research in regards to productivity and maintaining focus and the importance of multiple monitors. The reason why I mention this is because you can buy really great second monitors for next to nothing. I'm currently using I think I paid $109 for it on Amazon. It's the corporate 24-inch HP monitor, right? This is nothing. It's nothing special. It doesn't do anything fancy. It does have 3 ports in the back, which for nerds is a pretty thing. But I have a massive sized 4K monitor that I look at. It's my main monitor. It's super high res. It's 32 inches. It's really wonderful. And then I have this HP monitor that I've actually flipped over on its side. I have it in portrait mode as opposed to landscape mode, and they're mounted on arms on my desk, and it does make me more productive. In fact, so much so that I sometimes wonder if I need a third. But there's research behind this. If you're working at home, $109 investment for one of the HP standard corporate flat panel monitors is worth your time and investment. So research now supports.
And Peggy's asking some questions as far as ports and things like that. today with USB-C, I said USB 3. I should have said USB-C. It's incredible what could be driven there. And so that's probably just about all you need is going to be your USB-C port that's going to come off of your new MacBook Air or your new Mac Mini, whatever you choose to go with. You will need that adapter that goes to HDMI, but there's a ton of video that can be pushed through those connections. So
absolutely
good recommendations.
Well, Wes, where can people find you on the internet?
I am W. Fryer on Twitter. Speedofcreativity.org is my blog that I irregularly post to, but I am regularly sharing things on Twitter, and also my curriculum site where I'm posting my media literacy and Spanish lessons for this year is at mdtech.cassidy.org. How about you, Dr. Neiffer?
I am at Tech Savvy Teach, and I also work with the Northwest Council for Computer Education, www.ncce.org, and we will be announcing the opening of the registration of our March conference soon.
There you go. Very good. Excited for that. All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight on the EdTech Situation Room. We want to remind you that you can find small 32 kilobit MP3 audio versions of our show, as well as almost 100 meg video versions if you happen to want to download a podcast feed of videos. But you can always see us on YouTube. We want to encourage you to subscribe wherever finer podcasts are found and curated. You should be able to tell your smart speaker to play the latest episode of the EdTech Situation Room, and it should actually work. So that is a pretty cool thing. And until next time, we want to encourage you to stay savvy and stay safe. And look forward to a future episode where you may hear Dr. Neiffer talk about his experiences in the Apple ecosystem. I look forward to it with bated breath. Good night.
Good night.